the meeting, and the purpose of the recording is we tend to use elements of this in further communication with other members. You may or may not know that we made a YouTube video on Thursday, and I think by this morning more than 800 people have watched it. So it's all part of the new technology and working with the new technology. So just to, for a moment, then go back to the agenda. You will see I'm working from notes, which is not what I normally do, but circumstances are different. I'm gonna talk to you. I've spoken about the rules for Zoom. Jan will be taking the notes, and he will consolidate all of that. And when we get to question time, hopefully we've dealt with most of it. I'm going to talk to you about the big picture. It's crucial. We are well informed on the big picture, and this does impact on much of what you're seeing is happening in the country. We're going to talk about how South Africa is doing in terms of the relief measures. Jan will deal with that and just touch on some COVID-19 stats. Then I'm going to talk to you about the MFSA and our government affairs and our strategy around these matters. It's crucial for you to appreciate that we're not doing things in isolation. Everything really touches everything. And in the time where we are now, it's demonstrated more so than ever before. So I hope that in dealing with those issues, you will get an understanding of why we do what we do, and we're certainly also open for comment. We will be picking up on what I call common questions. Now, common means different things to different people. But some of the questions that has hit us is around what is an essential service. I mean, that's one question we have to ask ourselves. What about the unregistered lenders? Why are microloans not included? Why are the banks open? What is the value of my certificate, and why is the taxi industry and others open? We will take additional questions in terms of those which come in with the chats, and we will try to consolidate the next steps and do a closure. My intention is not to draw it out. I have an appreciation for the fact that time is money, and from my perspective, it's important that we do not waste your time. Doreen, you can remove the agenda. Thank you. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me then start off by talking to you about the big picture. As we stand now, we are in day 21, which many of us were hoping would be the last day. But now we're in day 21 of 35 days, which is a very long time, and we've only done 60%. The acronym COVID and WHO are two very prominent acronyms at the moment, and I think it's important for us to understand that the WHO, the World Health Organization, gave the specific name so that they could use it to stick. So it stands for Corona, Viral, Infectious Disease, and 19 refers to the year 2019, when it was actually picked up the first time. So COVID-19 is in that name, and the mere fact that they created that name, you can say that there's very important shows out in that. As we speak now, 212 territories has been impacted. There's some person who's got his video on and it's extremely moving around and it's really buggering. So just switch off the video. Thank you. It's in 212 countries. It has infected, and the figures that was out this morning, 2.1 million people, and deaths this morning was on 135,000. In terms of United States of America, where there already been 29,000 deaths, and yesterday South Africa tragically experienced 7 deaths, and we are now on 34. And that is the ones which we know about, and that would apply to everybody. The reference to territories also includes a reference to the Princess Diamond, the ship which had people on, of which 12 subsequently died. One of the important things to understand when we deal with this is that the youngest person who passed away in the UK was 5 years old. and the oldest one, 108. So some of the beliefs and myths that it only affects some people, there's elements of truth to that, but there's normally underlying to those numbers some demographics which is not published in the media. So it is classified as a pandemic. And I think this is important that we say this. Worldwide, it's classified as a pandemic. And it is therefore a killer. So we do need to understand that we do not at this stage actually understand the pathology of this virus globally. There are hopes for vaccines. It's hopes. When it will be produced and how effective it will be produced, we don't know. Testing seems to be the answer, and the treatment is not clear yet. In the UK at one stage, and those numbers may have changed, 80% of people who were put on ventilators did not eventually recover. So in some cases, the ventilator actually became almost a death sentence. From a broader perspective, we're talking about human life here. We're not just talking about 29,000 people or 1.2 million people. We're talking about humanity. And the best treatment out at the moment, unfortunately, is dependent on human behavior. And that is that we need to have social distancing and that you need to sanitize your environment, which is a requirement at this stage for potential access, which goes right against the grain of the human person and how he goes. Humans are mostly, there are the exceptions, social beings, and are all in one way or another interconnected and in the same system. So what is required at this stage from humanity is that we actually have to work almost against our instinct to be social. And that, to a large degree, has caused much of the disasters which we've seen up to now. In terms of what I then want to call the South African response, and I'm going to talk in quite a bit of depth to this, because the last 3-4 weeks, my time has basically been spent sitting in this very same room, helping us to prepare for what's coming and hopefully adding value to society and also to our members. The first thing is, when we talk about South Africa, we like to believe that we are unique. And in that uniqueness often lies our survival, but other times also our downfall. From the virus's perspective, whether you're a South African or a Chinese or a Nigerian or a Malaysian, doesn't make any difference. The virus do not know borders. Secondly, in South Africa, we need to understand that we're a welfare state. So for the state, the care of people is crucial. And that will explain, amongst others, the massive investment which is made by government into SASSA and other types of organizations. In terms of the governance response, they need to do so within the context of a democracy. In a democracy, you have certain rights, society has certain rights, and there needs to be a balance between the rights of the individual and society, and that is part of what government is dealing with. We can, for example, not do what was done, or can probably, but it's going to be challenged, just simply lock down a part of 50 million people and tell them there's no movement. In terms of our economic situation, and the meeting which is happening currently in Cabinet deals with this, the economic situation in South Africa is dire. We've been downgraded, we all know that. Our health system has always been challenged. And on top of that, we do have a very serious infection rate in terms of HIV, tuberculosis, and unemployment. So from a perspective of the things that government needs to handle and where we engage with them, all of this comes into play, and that also informs our strategy as the MFSA. So from a government's perspective, a couple of important insights to share. Now, let me then say, these insights are not gained by reading some newspapers or just opinions. You know, or you may know that we have a lobbyist company for which we worked for many years, and they move in the inner circles of government. Sometimes I move with them, other times they move on our behalf. And these are the elements which I then need to share with you in terms of our strategy. First of all, we're in a state of disaster. We're not in a state of emergency. It's a crucial element to make. Those who are negatively dispositioned to South Africa would like to tell the world we're in a state of emergency. We're not there. To go into a state of emergency, there's a specific procedure that needs to be followed by the state, and they've not done so. Secondly, this disaster is a national disaster. It's not limited to an area like a drought-stricken area or a fire area. And the lockdown is a tool in the disaster management process. And that tool has now been used with an extension. And if you listen carefully to the president when he announced the extension, unlike on the first time where he specifically said the date and the time, 11:59, he did not do this time. So the options for the state to manage the situation, given all that I've said to you, the lockdown is a tool in that. From a governance perspective, the nation needs to be protected. And the ultimate area they're protecting is our sovereignty. They don't want us to get into a state, in a position where we are totally useless, we're totally dependent on other people and other states to bail us out. And from a governance narrative, beating the virus is tops. That overrules all other legislation at this moment in the country. That includes the NCA, that includes many pieces of legislation. So the Disaster Management Act, commonly known as the DMA, tops all. All decisions that comes out of government needs to pass through the scrutiny as applied through law and regulation with the DMA. So where the government has found itself since we went into the state of disaster is that things had to be fixed on the fly. So you find a plane in the air, and that plane needs to be adjusted and fixed as we go. They certainly have an objective also to keep the economy going. At the end of the day, we need money, and we've spoken about the economy. They are extremely aware of the fact that you can't afford social unrest or even anarchy, and that did inform some decisions in the early days. And I need to say this, and I say it with caution, but it is a worldwide situation. This is also an opportunity for the leading party to show its mettle, that it can handle the situation. If they fail in this situation at a political level, they're probably going to pay a very high price, and we probably will all pay the price. So the thinking in terms of in government, and I'm bringing elements together from other discussions, is that if you do not shut down the economy, there will be no economy to restart. That's the one, that's the point of departure. The Minister of Health is driven by science and stats. This is not the first pandemic or epidemic situation he has to manage. And at this stage, he looks at the facts, and it is challenging because there are insufficient facts really on the table to inform the most liberal decisions you can take. So the narrative that's going around is the lockdown was hard and fast. So, and it will open slowly and carefully. Saying it in a different way, lockdown is a tango, opening is a slow waltz. So ladies and gentlemen, when I say these things, I hope that everything I say is wrong. I honestly hope I'm wrong. But we need to consider these elements and see how do we actually bring that into our planning. We certainly don't know what we don't know. And my earlier comments about the pathology, as well as the treatment and the inability to test properly adds to this. So our understanding and our information, intelligence is government will proceed with absolute care and caution. I think you can book on that. They will proceed with care and with caution. The decision is not the decision of one party. I refer to it as the brains versus testosterone thinking. You cannot fire off one letter to one person who you know in some place in government, and you're going to think you're going to get the result. In fact, this has backfired badly on one of our sister associations. So the decision is not with one person. And let me then, just for a moment, go into that. The president is the guy who makes the announcement. He's served by his presidency, and he's got advisors working with him. The same applies to the ministers, and the advisors, and they all ultimately also feed into the command council. And you need to know that the intelligence fraternity, including the police and the defense force, is part of the decision making. Part of government thinking is that cost of unlocking prematurely is high, and the last thing you want is a situation where you open up, you get some improvement, and you dip out again. Then the cost becomes astronomical. So from a government perspective, all of this is coming into play. So then moving to your association, and guys, thank you once again for the many people who's engaging with us and supporting us and giving information. Some of the information is just incredibly valuable, and thank you for that. Our bedside manner in this times are not always probably where it needs to be. Our first objective is to ensure a sustainable microfinance industry. That's in our mission statement. We've shared it with you many times, and that is still where we are. On the 16th of February next year, we will be 25 years old, and we really hope and we wish and we plan to have that celebration. So you need to know that we understand that we're a membership organization. We understand that you are volunteers joining us, and I'm very proud to say that we have not received a cent from government in doing our business. Therefore, thank you to you, and what we do for you and with your support. With the change of government last year in May, we really stepped up our lobbying work in anticipation of the new parliament, and we have engaged in various fronts with government. We got heads up that the state of disaster may come. I think what very few people understood at that stage what would be the magnitude of the problem. Fortunately, we have relationships in place, and we also know how the state machinery works. So from a MFSA perspective, we are familiar with the Disaster Management Act and how it works in these circumstances and how we have to lobby. And it very, very clearly indicates that we have to play a long game. Which then takes me to the debate of the essential services and what the MFSA has done. The first thing is, once the regulations was published, it very clearly and very definitely specified that banks and the financial and the insurance industry are seen as essential services. And there was a massive amount of running around. People, and Jan will touch on that, make interpretations that in terms of what was called short-term bridging finance, we qualify. Letters to that effect went round. There was also other documents going around to the effect of saying we should be an essential service. The reality is, the way it was written, the intention was not to say that we're an essential service. And following some of the debates, the debt collectors were specifically excluded as an essential service. So once the dust settled and we understood what is the process from the MFSA side in terms of lobbying our position, and that happened on the 2nd of April, when a regulation was published that Minister Mboweni ultimately has the right and the ability, although he works within the context as I described just now, to decide who will be an essential service. We drafted and crafted in a document, and that has landed then with the Minister of the National Treasury as well as the Minister of the DTI. We know him in the process because it is actually his department, and we have received acknowledgement that it's being considered. Subsequently to that, we engaged in a further process working with the labour movement, which we happen to know from other engagements, and we also working to this day with political parties to put on the table a proposal for a public interest loan. Now, as we sit in this meeting talking, there are some of your colleagues actually running the models for us, and thank you to them, which will be presented later today or later tonight to the Department of Trade Industry. And effectively, what a public interest loan is trying to achieve is to allow people to do credit in an environment where there's been a disaster and have some form of protection against reckless lending. It's never been invoked in South Africa, and we engaged with the ministries around this week, and within hours we had a reply back from them requesting us to come further and do a model. So as we speak now from an MFSA side, we have a strategy which basically says the following. One is we want to take the moral high ground. We're not going to be the guys who challenge the soldiers in the street and have our staff arrested. We don't want that. Secondly, we want to be sustainable, and we believe that we are providing an essential service. That message we've landed with 2 ministries. Part of our situation is that if they see us an essential service and we have to do the delivery of the public interest loan, then those things will tie up together. So as we speak right now, this is all being considered by government. Now, I'm going to quickly read you a message which I received while people were entering the room, speaking to what is playing out and how all of this is coming together. So this is an advisory to the media. Briefing by members of the National Command Council on COVID-19 lockdown extension. The Minister of Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, and Justice Correctional Services, Ronald Lamola, will today, 16 April 20, brief the nation on regulations pertaining to the extension of COVID-19 lockdown. Members of the media are invited to a virtual media briefing as per the details below, like all the others have been, and it will also be run on national TV as all the others have been. So, ladies and gentlemen, we find ourselves where the work that the MFSA has done in terms of essential services, as well as with regards to public interest loans, is now in that machine, and with many other people, we are awaiting an outcome. The reality right now is, at the time of creating this meeting, the economic plan is not yet on the table, and that is a major concern. We have been timing and pushing for that to happen. There is a medical plan, and the medical plan is as good as they could get, I guess, but the economic plan is not on the table. Yesterday we've got notice, and you will know that the budget in totality will be reworked in order to get the country ready to deal with the fallout of COVID-19. The COVID-19 testing results on a pathological level is not giving conclusive results. We don't know exactly who has the virus, where they are, where they're moving, and with who they have in contact. So in a way, we are partially flying blind. And The second factor which will play a role, I believe, is that the South African medical system is not able to handle a high peak or even 2 or 3 lower peaks. That's all going to go into the fix. So lockdown, we believe, will remain in some form or fashion. The state of disaster, we believe, will be with us for an extended period. And we are planning and we are taking measures in our strategy to, within this context, assist society and our members and our consumers to be able to get a life where they can actually just continue living, albeit in a massively different environment. I almost want to say, if the only thing is you take home, before I put Jan on, Jan, if you can get yourself ready, please. If the only thing is that you realize is that business will have to happen in a very different way. The lockdown came as a tango, and it will go out as a slow waltz. And I can guarantee you, at all levels, individual, business, society, government, there will be mistakes made. I am absolutely convinced of that. It's the nature of the beast which we have to handle. I'm going to ask Jan to briefly talk to you around the relief measures and some other practical stuff. Jan is, most of you know him, he's an advocate. He's been part of the MFSA team since day one. He came in the wake of Leonie, who has had a child, and he actually walked into a hornet's nest, and his skills and insights is coming very handy. So he's part and parcel of the team and everything we do. So Jan, it's over to you. I hope you can unmute yourself, or must I do that? Okay, Jan, I've got you unmuted. You can go.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly, Jan. You can go.
I can't see myself. I don't know if my video is on. I hope you guys can see me.
Okay, let me check quickly. Sorry, guys. This is new to all of us, to me as well. Your video is on, Jan. You can go.
Video is on. I can proceed.
Yes, make sure that you dress properly and your hair comes properly, etc.
Well, for those who know me, sorry about the beard. It's a bit of cabin fever. Henny, thanks for the invitation, and it has been a great journey with the MFSA so far on these issues, and I think it touches us all. And it is so important that the industry remains vibrant and healthy as we go forward. The first issue that I would like to raise is, before I start with the relief measures, is that we must just be careful. I've seen that the NCR has sent out a number of communications which are not on the website, and we've put these on our website, on the MFSA's website. And you will be able to pick some very important issues up there. So just a warning, please look at the MFSA's website for issues pertaining to the NCR, which is not necessarily on the NCR's website. Then, dealing with the issue of financial relief, I think as we commenced with the lockdown and this whole process unfolded, it was quite important to us to carry out the message to our members that there are relief out there, what that relief entails, and where you can find information pertaining to that relief. So we sent out details of websites, email addresses, contact details, and so forth. Now, the sad part is that often the relief takes the form of a loan, albeit a loan with very beneficial terms. It remains a loan, and there are usually strict conditions, and maybe you comply with those conditions where you can't. So that is also an issue. Very little of it pertains specifically to grants that are provided to business. And that is very sad. The one that did provide a grant was the Sakuma Fund. And I'll say a little bit about that a little bit later. So there were various funds that we were alerted to. Sakuma Fund was one. The Solidarity Fund was another. But that fund was more geared towards health issues and less to economical financial issues. Then there's the Solidarity Fund, the Debt Relief Finance Scheme for SMMEs from the Department of Small Business Development. Again, there are a vast number of criteria that you have to comply with in order to obtain benefit from that fund specifically. Then there's the fund of Nikki Oppenheimer, that's the South African Future Trust Fund, which provides an amount of 750 Rand per week for 15 weeks per employee. But again, it remains a loan. Then we've also alerted our members to tax benefits by SARS. And let me come in here and say that I'm not a tax expert, and I really suggest that that we do get a specialist opinion, or that you do get specialist opinion when it comes to that specific issue, when it comes to tax and SARS issues. We have provided a document which is called A Layman's Guide to Financial Relief. We placed that on the website, and there's a lot of information about that in that document. However, again, it may be prudent to seek a specialist advice on that issue. And then, of course, there's the COVID-19 UIF Temporary Employer Relief Scheme, or TERS, as it is commonly known. Just excuse me when I take a sip. So it's maybe prudent to say a little bit more. I don't want to do a lecture on this, but I feel I need to give some more information on TERS as it deals with our employees. And the government has made a very direct and strong plea to all businesses to look after their employees. So first question, who can claim? Well, contributors to the UIF, employers and employees, they can claim. The employer must have closed its business or part of its operation for a period of 3 months or less, and it must be as a direct result of COVID-19. The number of employees does not matter, but if you have up to 10 employees, what will happen is the UIF will pay the amounts directly into their bank accounts. If it's 10 or more employees that you have in your business, then the payment will be made to the employer, and the employer will have to ensure that it transfers the money to the employees. Obviously, the employee must have been in the employer's employment on the 27th of March and must have suffered or will suffer a loss of income due to closure. And the benefit may not be used for purposes other than to cover the cost of salaries during the closure. The process kicks off via an email, which is very strange, but what the employer is supposed to do is you're supposed to send an email. We've provided that details. I can just quickly give it again. It is simply COVID-19 without the hash, COVID-19 TERS, TERS, at labour.gov.za. That's the way that the process starts. And then the employee employer will receive an automatic response from the UIF outlining the process and the documents and information that is required. So they will make it easy on you and explain to you what it is that you need to give to them. These documents would include a letter of authority from the employer, the UIF's template, which includes details of the employer, the period of closure, the list of employees and the dates of employment, ID numbers, and the remuneration received by the employees, and proof of remuneration to employees for the previous 3 months. And also confirmation of the employer's bank account. There's also a memorandum of agreement that will be signed ultimately between the UIF and the employer, which will form the basis of issuing of the funds. So what is the value that, that employees can gain from this? There's a sliding scale, but in effect, it means somewhere between 3,500 and 6,730 Rand per month. And it depends very much on what the salary of the employee is. Now, there is a threshold amount of 17,712 Rand. So if the employee receives less than that, then he will get a percentage of that amount. If the employee gets more than that per month, then he will not get a percentage of what that amount is more. He will actually just get a percentage of the maximum of 17,712 Rand.
Jan,
So,
I don't want to interrupt. That's enough detail on that one. If we could move on, please.
Okay, so we also provided a document on Masaramuli attorneys, from Masaramuli attorneys, and that also deals with the employee-employer relationship, which is quite important to consider. So, in essence, most of the relief measures are loans with beneficial repayment terms, but very little grants. It is a fact that the relief out there is too little. I mean, we've seen it with the Sukuma Fund. It is simply unbelievable. We alerted our members on a Saturday, and on Monday night, the fund was depleted. There were too much demand for the loans available, for the money available. Okay, the COVID-19 landscape is continuously changing. And this applies to this environment as well. And I have some suggestions on how you can deal with it. Now, the first prize for us is obviously that we become an essential service and that we can trade and that business is open and that we can fully trade again, which is quite important. But we need to prepare for a long game. As Annie said, this is going to be with us for quite some time. It's not only the lockdown that we need to think of, we need to think of after the lockdown. So we need to be agile. It's a bit of like a boxing match. We have to roll a bit with the punches. You can't say exactly what's going to happen, and you need to adapt to the situation as it unfolds. Then I need to make a plea with you to become a researcher. It is so important that you do legwork. We can provide you with information about all the relief that's out there. And some might be appropriate to you and some might not be. But you need from your side to do much legwork. Become a researcher, see what is out there. And if you come across something you think that fellow colleagues should know about, alert us in that regard. Communication is of vital importance. You know, when you think about your landlord and your creditors, and you think about your service providers, litigation is not the way to go when it comes to these things. It's quite important that we communicate with these people. We are all in the same boat. And this also applies, of course, to our own clients. So you need to think about, how am I going to communicate with my clients in these times ensure that I retain that client and that I later can also service that client. So we can quite clearly accept that COVID-19 has changed the way that we conduct business. There's no doubt about it. We need to think on how to survive. What can we do? How can we do it differently in order to stay afloat in these times? Sadly, you will be required to make some harsh decisions, and you will be required to be making some harsh decisions in respect of your own staff members. And here, it is important to know that you must make informed decisions. And again, I refer you to the Maseru document that we have on the website that we've sent out as well. So this is a time where we have to ask, how can we be part of the solution and not part of the problem? And Henny has set the scene very clearly on how we have approached the interaction with the ministers, the letters that we've written, the engagement that we've had. And we've been able to do that simply because we had our footing correct from the very start. There's a clear communication from our side that we are not an essential service. And on that point, I just need to say this. Some groups, some large lenders tried to apply the exemptions to the Competition Act, which was published on the 23rd of March, pertaining to banks and payment systems to the micro-lending environment. That is ludicrous. You can't do that. We have discussed it with them, and they have changed their view. Others stretched the imagination so wide in an attempt to read into the regulations that credit providers are essential services that it boggles your mind. And again, that kite will not fly. So it's important that we get those basics right and concentrate on the correct things. There was an article that was in the Mail and Guardian that formed the basis of another opinion on the short-term, they called short-term bridging finance. Again, this is a media report. It's not in the regulations. It's not in the law. So it's important to know that there's a lot of fake news floating around, and this is part of fake news to a large extent. We must rely on the law and the regulations and the proper interpretation thereof. So my advice to you is think long-term, think bigger, think about your role in society, in your community, and how can you play a role which is maybe separate from your business, but also which impacts on your business because it impacts on the community that you serve. The building of relationships in this period is crucial. Your relationships with your community and your consumers, the MFSA's relationship with yourselves, as well as with government and regulators. It's a time to strengthen those relationships. And we have an opportunity here, and Henny, I must compliment you in the way that you've tackled this problem. Because the way that we've conducted ourselves from the very beginning has provided us an ear from the minister. And I think that is the most important message I can give to you. If you think of the debt collectors that have been excluded from essential services, particularly excluded, then it's quite crucial to understand the work that has gone in so far to build on relationships. Henny, I think that's all from my side for the moment.
Thank you, Jan. I think very comprehensive. There are questions coming through regards to stuff on the website. If it's not there, I'll double check and I'll make some comments about that. And I think what is important, what Jan has said, is that your negotiations with people in which you are with long-term contracts, they are also under pressure So nobody is in a position where you can simply just call the shots. I want to move at quite a rapid pace because time is running. First of all, let me now just talk about the MFSA and what we've been doing. So when this all happened, we also moved into the work from home situation. It happens to coincide with Leonie's maternity leave. So the staff and the people in support are all working from home. And we meet daily, either using WhatsApp or Zoom facilities. So the office is functional. And as we speak, I'm actually looking at strengthening the technology because I believe we're going to need that technology in the future as well. From my side, I engage with the board via emails and WhatsApp on a very regular basis. I would say roughly 5 times a week to update them on the various pieces of things that's happening. We have met as an exco, and I am in daily contact with and regular contact with the chair of the exco, Francis, and with Parky, our chairperson. Then we have created an internal SWAT team in the MFSA, so we're very much in a war room mode. And I've also created a COVID-19 team, which runs across other sectors with lawyers, which are helping us to understand what's happening in other sectors so that there's coordination. And then I can say to you, it's been absolutely heartwarming to see how the different associations, even the NCR and the SAB, has been opened up so we can talk to one another in this crisis time. We obviously deal daily with our lobbyists for many hours. And in that process, we hope to get the necessary intelligence. Just from our side, we communicate quite aggressively, and in normal times, we say to people, assist us with your email addresses and your phone numbers, and then we don't get much of a response because there's no urgency about it. But currently, if you're not on our mailing list, you're missing out badly. We've done a 16 email campaign since this started, 8 SMS and WhatsApp campaigns, and on the WhatsApp enrollment process, guys, I need you to reach out to us so that we can put you. WhatsApp is just far more powerful. We made a YouTube video, as we said, and 800 views this morning. What worries me, we've only had 250 hits on our website. So I want to encourage people to go to the website and get information. And if you have issues with the website, let us know. And then I think very important to say that we get many phone calls from people every day. So where we find our, before I say that, we've also done a survey. That information will be used in our presentation to the Minister later today. So thank you to all of you who have participated in that. So our focus is on the advocacy side, our engagement with government. And as we stand at this moment in time, we now are awaiting, first of all, what is going to be said in this media release, this media conference, and we will from that then be able to understand and unpack how it works in terms of the submissions we are making and have made already. I think the other thing I need to share with you guys in the background is that life is continuing. So a couple of important things is happening in the credit industry, which is going to impact on our lives going forward. The first one is that at a data level, SACRA is engaging with SAB. The reason for that is the SAB, in terms of the crisis we're facing, needs to understand some credit data. Previously, all of that very much we went the NCR way, and there's a database with the SAB and the NCR. That process is happening actively as we speak. Secondly, we are awaiting the SAB directive on debit check. All the submissions has been made, and SAB has undertook to respond soon. I can't make promises on their behalf, but as soon as we know what happens there, the directive fundamentally request and indicate that we extend the project with a year. Then they have also created a COVID-19 response team. The COVID-19 response team within PASA looks at debit order disputes. So we're working on strategies to stop people from simply just because it's COVID, although they have an income, they go and they stop their debit orders. That team is active, and we will also be putting out a position from PASA with regards to that. As soon as we receive a letter, we're expecting that this week as well. Then amidst this crisis, we've also been confirmed that we have our seat at the bank seat board table for another 5 years. Mr. Minister Nzimande put that in writing. It took a while. Then, at this stage, there's no answer in terms of the functioning of the courts. You will know there's an outstanding court case with regards to the deferred amount, which is scheduled for the 4th and the 5th of May in High Court in Pretoria, Tshwane. We're not sure what is happening there, and we will communicate in due course. And then, obviously, our conference, which was scheduled for 13 and 14 of August, has been postponed. My thinking is that we will do that hopefully in February. Then I think it's also important to say to you, the service providers, many of them, are coming forward with work from home solutions to assist people who have to work from home. So we're going to meet with them. I was hoping later this afternoon to see who would have an appetite for them. There's some of them in this conference as well, to actually market their solutions to you. And if the MFSA could assist in that regard, we obviously will do so in order to enable people for this new regime. Then I want to just talk about the media. There's a couple of people who believe the right thing is to run to the media and put their story there. Our strategy is categorically to engage with the media, but not to engage with government via the media. So if you get approached by the media, I would suggest that you are wide awake and don't get yourself in a difficult position. So at this point in time, the media has got enough to write about, but I think there will be a time it's going to come again. I also then just need to say to you, and I'm seeing this from other industries, there are people who are truly suffering. If you are able to, and I'm picking up on Jan's point, if you are able to make a contribution in your local area to some form of relief, I'm not talking about the loan book size now, actually help people with what form of assistance. If it's a plate of soup, do that. Do that in your local environment. We're not going to orchestrate that from here. We've got enough on our plate. But I really think it's an important time to do that. I really think, guys, it's also a time to really reach out to your consumers. I am aware of some people who are doing a sterling job to actually bring their people into their fold so that their customers become loyal to them in a crisis time. Others have publicly gone and said we're not going to continue lending until this is over. They've communicated with their consumers. Others said to the consumer, let's first see where the crisis goes. So you need to have very aggressive, and I use the word aggressive by design, you need to have aggressive client retention strategies in this time. And it will be different for each and every business. We can't just give you one size fits all approach, but it is crucial that you do this. And I can tell you the banks are doing it. From our side, we're going for the approach with the brain and not being rushed with testosterone. We really think we are calculated to what we're doing. We're playing the long game. And I want to echo what Jan has said. Facts. I'm mystified by some of the fake news that's going around. Check your facts, double check your facts, and certainly if something is rubbish and you think it's fake, send it back to the sender and call him to attention. It is not in the interest of anybody, not of you as an individual, neither of the country or your consumers, to let people get away with that. And I make a big sting out of this because I deal with it. I deal with the fallout of the fake news. And a lot of it, I think we're able to stop before it gets to you, but it does affect things. So be very, very alert. From the MFSA side, we're going flat out. My call to you is to first of all, take care of yourself. Secondly, to take care of your staff and their families, take care of your clients, and reach out into your community right now. It is crucial that we work as in unison as a fraternity. So to that effect, I'm also required to work with other associations and with non-members, but it's important that we do get the message through. We have chosen to take the moral high ground road. I think it is going to pay off. We're in for a long game. But guys, if we say we're all in the same boat, the Diamond Princess, which was the boat off the coast of Japan, there were people in very, very fancy cabins, and there were people in probably more basic cabins, economy class. But 12 people died on that ship because of the virus. So we're all in the same boat. There is no escaping this, and therefore we will have to act in unison. So from my side, before we deal with the questions, I haven't looked at any of those. I've been concentrating on that. Jan is going to assist me. I'm going to deal with the questions which is on the agenda up front, just to get that out of the way. The question is, what is an essential service? The irony is that in South Africa, an essential service is defined differently in different pieces of legislation. So essential service is not harmonized and singularly defined in South African legislation. That is a major part of the challenge we're facing here right now, and what we have to set up for. The other issue which impacts on this is the Disaster Management Act was not drafted with a national disaster in mind. It was drafted very much with a local disaster in mind. And that is part of the reason why we're so excessively stressed. So essential service in South Africa, as defined originally in terms of the Disaster Management Act, there's other definitions in other places. Therefore, the massive controversy. And clearly, the state is not at that stage, saw us as an essential service. What about the underground lenders? Underground lenders is exactly in the same position where they've always been. They're illegal. They will be a threat to us, but they will also be exposed to the same health risk as any one of us. So they are there. Some of my information says they've actually stopped lending because they realize they will not be able to collect their money. But there are some of them who's actually out there exploiting, and we have raised that in every correspondence we did, also with the ministries. The value of the certificate, Jan spoke about that. A lot of people got a certificate on information which says we see ourselves as an essential service, while effectively they were not, so the certificate is not worth the paper it was printed on. There are exceptions of people who have products in different sectors, and they are operating. There are also people without certificates, which we know have been able to keep their doors open because of arrangements which I don't always understand. And clearly there's also been people with certificates who've been arrested and their court cases are due. We're aware of that. In terms of the taxi situation, I just need to very briefly say to you, when this all happened and started off, it happened to also be at the time when the SASSA payments were due. The state could not afford to not have people have transport to go collect. The taxi industry was called upon. They did not, in general, abide by the rules, and they actually played strong arm with government because there is a history of tension between them. And the state was very nervous with having new and young soldiers and policemen on the road, and the taxi brigade becomes aggressive. So that is all in the pool. I think a lot of information around the taxi industry will come out after all of this. And I mean, guys, the thing is, the health risk is just unbelievable. Uber has now tried to jump, Uber each try on the bandwagon with the taxis. And we will see whether that's going to be successful. I would hope that the meeting later today is going to give us more clarity. As far as the NCR goes, just as a general note, guys, they're also working from home. They've put out some directives in terms of days and arrangements around the term we're in. And we're also talking to them on a regular basis just to stay in touch and keep updated. But in this situation, they are quite powerless. The DMA, the Disaster Management Act, overrules. That's where we are. On that note, I need to communicate with Jan in public here now. So, Jan, maybe can you guide me? What is the... Are you unmuted? Let me just double check. Yes, I've unmuted Jan now. Jan, have you been able to get a summary out of the questions? What is your guidance? Do we answer some of the questions? Do we answer the others in a different format? I see 64 questions, which clearly is just not possible
Yes.
to handle.
No, it is not, but I'm going to touch on some of the important ones. The Roelof has made a valid point about the Sukuma Fund. Now, just to fill everybody in on what has happened, we've had word that the Sukuma Fund has subsequently indicated that they cannot assist microlenders. Now, we've done our utmost best to get hold of business partners. Roelof has provided me with his cell phone number. I'll try and contact him to see if we can get hold of business partners. They are the entity who administers the Sukuma Fund on behalf of the Ruperts. And we do want to follow up and understand if microlenders are excluded, which Roelof says they are. And secondly, if they are, questions we do want to ask, because it was our understanding from the very beginning that nobody is excluded from this fund. So that we will follow up and understand Roelof's frustration regarding that issue. By the way, the issue is wider than that. I understand there's also a problem with the TERS UIF application process. We have to roll with the punches, guys. From our side, we'll do what we can, but there's only so much that we can do, and that's why we state that you also do a lot from your side to see how you can survive. But we'll follow up on those issues. And then we've had questions from Wayne. The first question is, what conditions will be applicable when we can operate again, in respect of number of customers in the shop, and also in respect of staff and safety of staff?
Okay, I can answer that.
Yes.
So let me do so. So, and this also ties up with a question which Mark has posed. So, guys, I'm not going to look for every question individually. Jan is assisting me. So, in terms of a directive which was published yesterday by the South African Reserve Bank, as well as engagement I had with the Credit Bureau's fraternity last night, as well as the information which I received from our lobbyists. When business is open, the demands on you to, first of all, look after the health of your staff, to do actual temperature checks, to report people who are coughing, and to actually physically sanitize your people and the environment and the people, and to ensure that social distancing is maintained, is going to be solely on the shoulders of the owner of the business. Clearly, this poses challenges, but the state will not, for some reason, decide that if you go to Woolworths or Microlender or the doggy parlor, and guys, let me just say, there's people believing a doggy parlor is an essential service. They're not going to allow that to happen. In terms of the question which you asked, Mark, tied into the government and the state's thinking in dealing with COVID and getting the economy back up is an absolute push for people to work from home. Now, the knock-on effect of working from home is that there is just almost no hardware available. We are seriously challenged on bandwidth, and there was a Fourth Industrial Revolution Commission, which was very, very slow in going anywhere. All of a sudden, those things have changed. And you will also may have noticed that Vodacom actually gave 20,000 phones to health workers. And because there's software on that and applications which can help with the process. So the bottom line is, when you open your current waiting hall where people sat 30 centimeters from one another, that will not be acceptable. I can with degree of certainty say that. And if you can do the work from home, or you can do part of the work remotely and minimize the contact between you and the client, that is probably where it's going. And it offers some major challenges. And therefore, also my earlier comment about the service providers, there are many of them now coming out of the woodwork trying to deal with that. So Jan, I hope that answers the question.
Yes, indeed, Danny. And the next one is also very much in your field of expertise in the area. It's about debit check. The question is about the expected numbers of defaulters.
Okay. So there's two debit check discussions. Will debit check work in its debit check market ready? Then is debit check within the context of COVID? So the directive which we have out, to which we're expecting a reply, hopefully this week, the whole project has effectively been extended by 12 months. Within the directive, there is room for the associations and other bodies to engage with an independent evaluator as to the merits, the values, the shortfalls of this process. So in that regard, the directive and what was required of you to do by the 1st of May 2020 effectively has moved to May 2021. Tying into that discussion then is, and I made reference to that, the banks are on absolute alert for people who in this situation abusively cancel their debit orders. We've done a lot of work to take the dirty players out. A couple of hundred businesses has been removed out of the payment space because they didn't play by the rules, or they were rogue, or in some kinds criminal. There's pending cases. And so we can't point fingers to the credit providers. And guys, I want to just make the point again. There's never been one of our members who has been charged in terms of the Payment Systems Act for misbehaving. And I want to thank you for that. It's exactly the same as the issue we have now. The fact that we have the moral high ground is crucial. And we are now part of that process to stop people from just willy-nilly changing their debit orders, stopping them because we're in COVID. And the strategy which we're working on now is that the person, when he wants to cancel, will have to come back to you. That will give you the opportunity to talk to him, hopefully convince him to not cancel. And if he has limited ability to pay you, then make a smaller payment. That work, and I'm gonna name the bank. The charge in that is led by F&B. And I've got some competent people on that. That's all stuff that happened yesterday. So debit check is we expect it to be postponed by 12 months. That's the long and the short. The project is not ready for the market, and we will have a time to make input with regards to what we think is not working. Your input will happen through two channels. One is the PSSF, where David and myself, David Wang, is working. Secondly, we've got an internal committee within the MFSA, which is made up of Brett van Aswegen from Wonga, Mariette Eastern from Royal Finance, Ockert, previous chair, the current deputy chair, myself, and Leonie. I think that's the team, which will deal with these things on an ad hoc basis until such time that we've got the payment situation better stabilized. And then the point David is driving very hard is that we want a service at the level of which ADO is currently. If the service can't give us that, we have a problem. And that has been registered at the highest levels. Thank you, Jan.
Then there's a very strong feelings about how our members are supposed to be closed whilst other micro lenders are operating. And the second part to that is, let's first deal with that issue. If I can deal with that issue, Eddie.
Okay, please, Jan. We have discussed it.
I understand that where the concern is coming from. You want everybody to play by the same rules. I just want to state that some of the entities who did not play by these rules have been arrested by the police and are being prosecuted in the criminal courts on the fact that they have traded whilst they were supposed to be closed. So, is it worth taking a chance? No, it's not. Unless you want to sit with a criminal record, and the state seems to be keen to prosecute these entities. Because as your introduction stated, there's a larger picture at play here. We sit with a global pandemic, and the consequences can be dire. If we do not treat this with the necessary respect, we might find ourselves not only without business, but we may actually find ourselves in graves. This is a serious reality of this. And it is sometimes as if we don't make that connection. And it is so important that we understand this. There is a larger picture at the back of this. So, yes, there are people who are not playing by the rules. Yes, some of those people are being investigated and are being prosecuted. It's not worth you taking the risk in doing so. So stay away from that argument. The second question is:
Jan, would you recommend that people report this to the police, or what would your recommendation be if they feel they have to take the action? I mean, it's a terrible discussion to have, but let's have it.
Yeah, that's the second part, Henny, and very much the police. I agree with that approach. Because of the particular situation that we find ourselves in, it's going to serve no purpose to report it to the NCR. The NCR is also closed under lockdown. You need to report this to the police, because what we are dealing here with is a contravention of the Disaster Management Act and its regulations. So that is the route that you need to take. I would encourage you to do so. It's important that we all play by the same rules. Paul also asked a question, Henny, about can we operate remotely, and how can we do this?
So the answer is, and this is a crucial distinction, and this applies to the debt counseling fraternity, even banking, mortgage originators, although there's not many houses being sold, the debt collectors fraternity, and our fraternity. If you are able to function remotely, you are allowed to function. The issue in terms of the disaster, and my original explanation, because we do not know the pathology of the virus, we know that putting people in contact with one another is the problem. So the objective is to keep people away from one another. The definition of essential services was effectively a slacking of the curfew. I'm under curfew. I'm not allowed to leave my house, and I can tell you I've left it once only in the 3 weeks. To go and do some shopping. I'm not allowed to leave my house. If I was an essential worker, if I was an ambulance driver or a nurse, I'm allowed to go there. The taxi who takes me there needs to be registered, and it must only, may only transport people who are going to that hospital or delivering another essential service. And in that taxi, social distancing needs to be maintained, and the taxi driver is responsible for the different levels of sanitation that is required. So this is the picture. So you can continue to do business remotely. There are some huge technical challenges with papers and things, and my guidance would be you need to be superbly conservative, because you don't know the risks of the people you're helping. Their risk has also changed, and you need to understand that risk. I think it is a very dangerous position to take, to say everybody's salaries, regardless of where they work from, is just guaranteed forever and a day. So your risk is a medical risk, a criminal risk, as well as a financial risk you need to consider. Hope that helps, Jan.
Yes, indeed, Annie. There is a very strong feeling from our members that we are indeed an essential service, and I think from what we've said here this morning, we all agree on that point. So, I think our members can accept that. That is also the view that we hold.
Okay, so let me just deal with this very, very thoroughly and upfront. You must have no doubt that the correspondence and the lobbying we've done echoes everything we've said over the years in terms of us being essential. Let me then embroider on that, because we haven't done so. And guys, I know we're over time, so if people leave the meeting for other meetings, I will not be offended. So the first point is this. If our members are legal and they are registered, they have a place in the sun. Our members help people who often cannot be helped by the high street institutions, which is the banks, which in the current environment is not very keen on helping people because of the risk which we've just explained. So people can go to the bank if they can find the right branch, but the chances of them being helped is not what it would have been before. The consequences of us not being essential services is one, that those people are going to be left in the cold when they need it most. And alternatively, they're going to be left to the underground market, what we call the loan sharks. And all of those elements is in our correspondence. And we effectively are working against and undoing all the good work which we've done over the years in terms of financial inclusion. So guys, you need to have, if we say to you, the way the law stands, you need to close your office because that's what the law says. We're not saying that you're not essential. In terms of the law at that point in time, we were viewed as not an essential service. And it's been really bedeviled by, as I said just now, even the doggy parlor now trying to make out the case that they are an essential service. And that is what is in the pot right now. We know that it's being considered as we speak by the structures which I've discussed just now. And once we have the outcome, what will determine what is our next step. And that step is certainly going to be a very definite one, and it's not going to be a testosterone driven out, guns blazing. It will be very, very well calculated, and it will be done in consultation with the necessary parties.
Thanks for that. There is also a question pertaining to a trading between 9 and 12. I have not picked up specifically on the question myself. I don't know of that. It's not in the regulations.
No, it's certainly not in the regulations. Some people draw this back to some of the arrangements with transport or certain shops which have been allowed. The regulations very definitely does not anywhere say that we can be open from 9 to 12. Having said that, limited hours, working by appointment, working remotely, that pertinently is things which we need to think about. I think that is going to be out in the pipeline. I know that our service providers, I had discussions with the guys in the payment space yesterday, are preparing themselves for that type of scenario. Even shops being open on Sunday. And I know that makes some people's stomachs churn, but if we have to have social distancing, and if we're going to work in a bricks and mortar environment, the only way you're going to handle people effectively is that you will have to change the way your working hours work. For that to work, one will need to make sure that there's transport available for people to get to where they have to be. It's no use opening it up and there's no transport. And that is part of the coordination which government is being pressurized at the moment. Okay, thank you, Jan.
Eddie, I just want to make a comment on something that you said earlier regarding the Subsea certificates. There's a lot of questions around that, people having certificates. I think you made the point very eloquently, and I want to confirm it again. The mere fact that you have a certificate does not mean that you are an essential service. You are an essential service if you are clearly defined as that in terms of the regulations. So the mere fact that somebody has a certificate and remains open on that certificate, that is not the question. That certificate could either be fraudulent or it's simply administrative process. It still needs to stand the test of whether it is an essential service or not, as addressed in the regulations. So I think we've dealt with that point thoroughly. There's also a comment from Okkert regarding African bankers trading, and it is primarily a lender. Will they also be reported to SAPS? No, the banks, we know that the banks are quite clearly defined in the regulations. My view is no, any. They will not, because they are a bank and they are allowed to operate.
Okay, so on that one, where it's going to get interesting, and it's a good question, where this one is going to get interesting in the time to come, either now or later, is a competition commission issue. But I don't want to go there right now. So the underlying thinking in the question is they are in our market and they're able to operate, and effectively they could be arbitraging our client base. And I think that will also be part of the arguments that are going to come out once we see what comes out of the council today. So there's certainly merit in those arguments. The thing is how we're going to combat it. I can also say to you that I know that the banks who are open are not finding it easy to do business, and clients are being turned away rather disappointed because of the discussions we've had already. So I think there's going to be some ugly stuff that's going to come out in the wash. I'm sorry to say it like that, but it will come out, and we're not going to let it go by. Anything else, Jan?
I think I've just want to see if we missed anything that we have not touched on specifically, Henny.
And while you do that, Jan, I see some guys have been very opportunistic to market their services while we're here. Now, in the old days, I would have given you a scrubbing and send you an invoice, but I won't do that, Charles. we need information. So let me just say, if there are other service providers in the room and you want to post something, please do so. I need to say this. I took an absolute deliberate decision not to open this platform for marketing and let other people pay for the cost, because we needed to have these discussions. And if people are in the room and they have the interest to be here and they want to remind the market they're here with their name and telephone numbers, I believe you will be doing it in the greater interest. So if you want to do so, but just do it in an elegant way. It is important that you know the service providers are there. I talk to many of them. They're there and they're standing deep in the mud. I spoke to a service provider last night, 7:15, and not to the receptionist who's answering the phones, the CEO, wanting to help. So I can say the guys that the service group. Earlier yesterday, I had a discussion with one of the payment guys who actually, to the point about how do you handle the social distancing, having a legal background, explained to us very smartly how we can do it and how we can actually engage with government. So we're getting great support there. I thought I need to say that.
I think we've dealt with most of the issues. I see we are standing at an hour and a half.
Okay. I want to make some closing remarks then, if I may, Jan. So I don't know if you want to say something in closure, then I want to make 2 or 3 remarks, and then I would appreciate if the hosts and yourself, Jan, stay on after this conference, that we can just do some work.
Certainly. if I may just get a bit philosophical for a moment, I think from my side, I can understand the frustration that members have. It is legitimate frustration. We are affected by something that we did not foresee coming. And it impacts on our lives tremendously. But we have to be vigilant. We have to be realistic. We have to adapt under all circumstances. And we must accept that the business of tomorrow will not be the business of 2 months ago. Things will change. And if we want to survive, we need to adapt to that change. Just a short message from me.
Okay, guys, I'm sharing with you my engagements with other people. So one of the wise words I've had from a member last week, I mean, you guys know him. He said, "Control what you can," and that's absolutely critical. Control what you can control. You can control your relationship with your clients. You can control whether you lend or not. You can't control whether the guy on the other side of the street is open or not. Control what you can and do what is right for your business. And personally, that's the philosophy I'm going about. My family and my wife sort of says, you become a little narrow man. You always got this big picture. Big picture to me, I understand the big picture, but there's things I need to do now. It seems to me to work. Secondly, this is going to be a little controversial. People say we cannot do business electronically because our clients is not there. Our clients will get there, and the new generation is there. I had to learn to run a Zoom meeting in a matter of minutes, made massive mistakes, and probably made some more mistakes this morning. Because I'm the guy who would like to go to the coffee shop, sit with you, and if we have a problem, we sort it out. Eye to eye, we shake hands. I probably try to get you to pay for the coffee, and we move on. Technology has forced me to do things very differently. And the magic thing is I've met new people with fantastic inputs who's just not able to get around to meetings and see people the way I do. And they've steered me fantastically. So you need to get your clients with you in this technology situation, as hard as it is. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Then finally, guys, life will never be the same again on this planet. I can assure you of that. If you're a traveler, I know we've got members who love to travel. You will have to prove that you're healthy. You will have to have a purple card that says you've had the vaccination. You will be heat tested for an extensive time. And certain destinations, which was pristine destinations, will all of a sudden just not be there. And this is going to apply to all of us. So the final word I want to say to you, it's an absolute honor to serve you. I work hard like you all do, work with massive uncertainty, and that's actually the complexity, it's uncertainty. But it has been an absolute honor to serve you guys, and thank you for your support, thank you for your input, and I hope that you will continue to do so. And guys, if we don't answer your email in 2 minutes, it's just because there's a lot going on. I don't want to overcapacitate too soon. So on that note, guys, from my side, thank you very much. I'm not going to end the meeting as such. I'd appreciate if you leave the meeting so that I can continue some discussion with the team. Thank you very much, and thank you to the host who worked with me, and thank you to you for participating and for the array of questions. And we're looking forward to handling the next phase. Bye, Dankie.